Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Continuing to take a look at the Week 3 slate in a sneaky good game as Georgia Tech heads on the road to play Ole Miss. And if you've been listening to me all offseason as this season has kicked off, you know how high I am on this Ole Miss team, especially once they get healthy and get guys like Zachary Franklin, Trey Harris back right. You take a look at the SEC, take a look at the quarterback position. I think there's a legit argument that Jackson Dart is the best quarterback in this conference. That being said, what Brent Key's done with this Georgia Tech team and how he has this Georgia Tech team playing hard, like this is going to be a very interesting matchup. Excited to get into it. Now, before we do again, just want to say one thank you to you guys. Over 8,000 subscribers on the channel. It is truly incredible. The support you guys have shown truly means a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, let us know in the comment section how you guys are feeling, whether you agree, whether you disagree. That's the beauty of this sport. That's the best part about doing this is talking ball with you guys in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Dill, going to kick this one off to you. Georgia Tech heading on the road to play Ole Miss. How are we feeling here?
I mean, in kind of a down week, honestly, in the overall college football slate, I think this game is right up there in terms of what I'm looking forward to. Like, very excited. I think, for Ole Miss, this gives them a very good springboard to kind of get into this SEC play because I do think a win against Georgia Tech is a quality win. And frankly, if people don't know that now, by the time the ACC schedule comes around, I think people are going to start figuring out because you look at what Georgia Tech did against Louisville. I think there's a strong argument they should have won that game, and I think they're going to win a fair amount of ACC games. So for Ole Miss, this is like I think a good opportunity to just put a really quality game in to get ready for that.
And again, like I think that this is a massive confidence booster because you go next week. If you can get all your guys healthy, and you saw Alabama struggle big time against Texas, like you got to be really excited if you're Ole Miss. Pick up a quality win here, and then go on the road to play Alabama. Now, there are some matchups that like you got to pay attention to for Ole Miss because again, Georgia Tech, very quality team. Dill, I want to start on the offense of Ole Miss going up against this Georgia Tech defense because we watched that Ole Miss game against Tulane. We watched every snap. We watched that game twice. And like the biggest concern if you're Ole Miss is this was a team that was one of the best rushing attacks you saw all year last year. Really struggled to move the football. I thought the offensive line just wasn't winning at the point of attack. I mean, not great protection for Jackson Dart. Not great run blocking for Quinshon Judkins. It's a team that relied on the run last year heavily. I would like to see Ole Miss get it going up front and kind of establish this run against the Georgia Tech team that I think you can run the football against.
And frankly, they're going to need to have some sort of base offense. I think that works because I don't think this Georgia Tech team gives a ton of easy stuff away. You look at that Louisville game, I can think of a handful of moments. In Georgia Tech, the one thing they probably need to do a lot better on is tackle, especially in that second half of that Louisville game. That's when it started to get away from them on defense. But I don't think Georgia Tech gives up much easy in that secondary in terms of letting guys run free. And honestly, for Ole Miss, that was too big of a part of their offense, I thought, last week against Tulane. Like, they need to try to somehow get back to the way they were running last year when they could run the ball pretty much on anyone they played.
And, like, that helps open up, like, those deep balls. Like, when you can run the football and they got to roll safeties in the box, that's when Lane Kiffin in this Ole Miss offense really starts to cook. Last week, like, they didn't really force Tulane to kind of load the box because they couldn't really run the football. Now, Tulane has that is such a well-coached team. That has such a good defensive line. But this Georgia Tech front seven, although I like some players, take a look at the numbers. 0 TFL, 0 sacks against Louisville, 0 sacks and only 4 tackles for a loss against South Carolina State. It's a group that I think is going to get better for Georgia Tech. But as of right now, Brent Key's still working on getting those bodies up front. For me, I think Ole Miss might have a little bit more success running the football. And I think they'll need to because not sure Trey Harris goes. Not sure Zachary Franklin goes. You might need to rely a little bit more on Quinshon Judkins. I even saw an Ole Miss offensive lineman come out after the game and said, that's on us. Like, we got to be better. I think Georgia Tech gives them an opportunity to get a tune-up before they go on the road to Tuscaloosa next week.
Frankly, you look from Georgia Tech's perspective, they need to create something. They need to do something to create negative plays because
have to.
Again, you look back, like that's what Tulane did effectively is they created a couple negative plays, knocked Ole Miss off schedule. You look at what Georgia Tech did against Louisville, really the only game that's comparable in terms of the skill level. No negative plays. It felt like they never really put a ton of pressure on Louisville's offense. And frankly, they played well. It's not like they gave up anything easy. And if Louisville made mistakes, they obviously were able to get off the field and do some things. But again, when you don't create anything negative, you just get the feeling that the opposing offense is never off schedule. And I do think that's an important thing to do against this Ole Miss team, because that's kind of what Tulane was able to do in the first half. And then obviously,
especially with a Lane Kiffin offense that wants to go be aggressive on fourth down, like keep them off schedule and create third and longs where you kind of take that opportunity to go for it on fourth down away from them sometimes.
And frankly, I think Georgia Tech, like there's some guys on this defensive line. I mean, I'm looking for Kennard especially. I think you look at kind of what the body and what he did. He's a guy I feel like could be far more disruptive. So especially again against an offensive line that struggled. So can some of these guys on Georgia Tech get rolling? If they can, I think they can be competitive. I don't think they're going to shut this team down just because I don't think they quite have the top end talent yet to just go wall to wall, dominate a football game on defense. But I think they can be much more competitive than what they were.
And if you're Georgia Tech, you got to kind of like Tulane did, just muck it up a little bit, create some negative plays, throw Ole Miss off schedule, because that is kind of how Tulane hung around. And when in the second half, when they started get the run game going a little bit, that's when Ole Miss started like cooking. Shout out Dayton Wade, Jordan Watkins. Like when you were down some wide receivers, needed some guys to step up. Those guys were really good. Jackson Dart, I listened to some people say Jackson Dart was awesome yesterday. I don't think he was awesome. I think it was more like he's a gamer. Like it got to the second half, he needed to make some plays, and he is that guy. He's clearly taken that step. So if you're Ole Miss, you got to be really excited. Imagine Dill, and then we'll move to the defensive side of the ball versus Georgia Tech offense. Trey Harris, Zachary Franklin, Jordan Watkins, Dayton Wade. You get pre-scoring back Michael Trigg. Like Lane Kiffin's going to start cooking when he gets these weapons back. Now, going to Georgia Tech's offense, Buster Faulkner's done a great job. Like they took Haynes King, and Haynes King looked brutal at Texas A&M. Dill, I remember you saying, "Oh, if Haynes King starts, like what? Just Georgia Tech team's going to be in for some trouble." Using Haynes King like he was supposed to be used, and it's helping this Georgia Tech offense in massive ways.
And honestly, to me, it starts with when Georgia Tech was really cooking against Louisville, they were able to run the football the football really effectively, and that's something we kind of talked about. I mean, Brent Key kind of being an offensive line guy, can you play a little more physical, especially in the first half against Louisville? They did it. I think the problems came is when they kind of lost the ability to run the ball in the second half for whatever reason that was. And then it kind of became the Haynes King show a little more. And frankly, he did play really well for most of it, but he did make some critical errors, obviously led by the fumble. That, again, those are the type of things in a close ball game get you beat. I think if they can keep the ball out of his hands in terms of just being like running through him,
that's 100% exactly what I want. And you look when Haynes King struggled at Texas A&M, they're keeping him in the pocket. They're saying, hey, you got to be a pocket passer. Haynes King has a good arm. There's a reason why he was such a high recruit. But when Haynes King is playing his best football, he's using his athleticism. He's getting outside the pocket. That's when you saw him play his best football against Louisville. I look for him to do it against Ole Miss too. Now, Dill, well, I also want to shout out the wide receivers. I think they've had a massive upgrade in the talent. Like Malik Rutherford, Dog, Chase Lane, really good. You saw Dominic Blaylock come alive against South Carolina State. I think the talent around the quarterback from last year, clearly better. Brent Key did a phenomenal job in the transfer portal. Now, Dill, I want to get into the reason why I'm so high on this Ole Miss team. Like Lane Kiffin, Jackson Dart, Quinshon Judkins, all this talent. I know they're going to score some points. Pete Golden in this Ole Miss defense, phenomenal against Tulane. And that's why I think, like, if you to ask me a dark horse, like a deep cut, I'm not talking about picking Georgia, Alabama to be a competitor in the SEC. Still, it's Ole Miss because I think this defense was awesome against Tulane. I think it can be a really good unit in 2023.
I mean, honestly, you think Ole Miss, like can't recall a time where I've seen this good a defensive line play. I think led by Pegas and Ivy. I mean, those two guys, just big, physical. Like they give me like Alabama, Georgia vibes, like physical, like guys who just look like they're two
game wreckers
handle for most offensive linemen.
That's a damn good Tulane offensive line that I thought Ole Miss was really mucking up that game for.
And that's again, when you talk like can Georgia Tech get the run game going, this is a tougher unit, frankly. And I think Louisville, Georgia, their offensive line is going to really need to bring it. Hopefully Jordan Williams is back because I do think he was a big part of kind of the slowdown when he left the game in the second half for Georgia Tech. But if he can come back and the rest of the guys can play like they played against Louisville for the first half, I think they can be tough. But honestly, I don't see them running the ball down this team's throat because everybody's just playing at a physicality level that you didn't see, and that includes the linebackers.
That's what I'm saying. Like the difference in the physicality and the playmaking ability. We said this. Like Lane Kiffin's got to get his guys on defense. It feels like he has his guys. He's got his defensive coordinator, Pete Golden. I mean, JJ Pegas, Jared Ivey, Cedric Johnson, Isaac Akuku. I think I said his name right. From James Madison. Those are all potential all SEC dudes. Like, it's a really good defensive front. And then you look at the backside, guys like Monty Montgomery, Suntarine Perkins, need to see him get a little bit more burn. The front seven, really good. And then you look at the back end. I thought they did a really good job, especially in the second half. John Sanders coming over from Miami of Ohio, long, sticky, gets his hands on a lot of football. This is by far the most talented Ole Miss defense that we've seen, and it's coupled with the play calling with Pete Golden, who I think is a really good defensive coordinator. All right, let's get into the pick here. Ole Miss sitting at 20.5-point favorites at home against Georgia Tech. Dylan's already shaking his head.
I like Ole Miss a lot. I think this is so unbelievably disrespectful to Georgia Tech. I love Georgia Tech to cover this game. I don't see how they're putting this at so far away from Tulane. Georgia Tech's good. Did people not watch them play Louisville? They looked really, really good. They look like physically very ready to go play a lot of football teams. I mean, they're a better team than I think a lot of people think.
I 100% agree with the Georgia Tech evaluation. That being said, if this game gets to 21.5, 22, and it's 3 scores, I hate betting against Lane Kiffin in this offense on big spreads because they can score and they can score really quickly. That being said, I could see it being like this. This is not a pick where I'm down on Ole Miss. I'm on the Ole Miss hype train 100%. I could see this game being hey, we're going to sit Trey Harris, get him right. Obviously, Zachary Franklin, this wouldn't be a spot where you want to play him either. I'm not saying they're going to sleepwalk through this Georgia Tech game. I think it could definitely be hey, we got to get our bodies right for Alabama on the road next week. And so maybe you sit some of those playmakers. Georgia Tech's going to muck it up a little bit. This team plays hard. I think they can keep it close. I don't know if I take it inside of 3 touchdowns because I do think Ole Miss
they don't make mistakes that I think Ole Miss does a really good job capitalizing on. I just didn't see that against Louisville. Yeah. I thought they played a really sound game. I thought they started to play really sound football towards the end of last year. I just think this Brent Key led team doesn't give you games as much as kind of you think, and to be a 20-point dog or whatever it is, you need to kind of be a team that gives away games. And I just don't think
that's a good point because Lane Kiffin capitalizes. Not only does he have the guys, but he capitalizes off mismatches, blown assignments. He's going to try to confuse defenses. You're not going to get the freebies of guys running open, I don't think.
Because frankly, Georgia Tech man-to-man is probably a little outmatched in this football game, I would say. But I just think in order to give up that many, 20 points is a ton of points. I think Georgia Tech's better than that, and I think they play a sound game, a good, clean football.
So it's a Georgia. It's a Georgia Tech pick. I'm going with Ole Miss covering it. That being said, if it gets to 21.5, I'll be on Georgia Tech too. I want inside of 3 touchdowns. I'm in on Ole Miss. If it gets outside of 3 touchdowns, because again, I have a lot of respect for this Georgia Tech team, but I love Ole Miss. I love how fast they can score, and I think that defense is seriously really good. But for Ole Miss fans, this is a game where you want to see establishing the run and then heading on the road to Alabama next week, where I think that's a very winnable game. Appreciate you guys, the boys. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas, and we'll talk to y'all later.